She bathed in aromatic oils, put on her most exquisite dress, and wrapped herself in Florentine perfumes, hoping to impress her future husband. She was about to meet the King of France, Henry IV. Their marriage, arranged for political reasons, was meant to strengthen the Medici family's influence in Europe and solidify the ties between France and Florence. But from the very beginning, the royal union was not what Maria had imagined. Instead of a warm welcome and a romantic encounter, she was met with cold indifference. It was the first sign that her expectations and reality were worlds apart. The wedding ceremony at Lyon Cathedral was delayed due to the late arrival of the papal legate. But the real shock came when Maria met her husband for the first time. The marriage negotiations had lasted for months. The official agreements were signed in May 1600. Yet Henry IV showed no eagerness to see his future wife. It wasn't until October that he sent an envoy to Florence. In the 17th century, it was common for royal weddings to take place by proxy, with the bride and groom living in different countries. That's exactly what happened to Maria. Her first husband on Italian soil was Roger de Bellegarde, who stood in as the king's representative. After the ceremony, Maria set off for France with an enormous entourage. 2,000 people and countless trunks filled with her dowry. She brought not only dresses and jewelry, but also furniture, musical instruments, horses, spices, and perfumes. Everything a new queen might need in a foreign land. Yet, more than anything, she wanted to impress her husband and become a worthy queen of France. She was excited about their first meeting. History had seen touching royal introductions before. Charles VI once sneaked out to see his bride before the official meeting, and Henry I rushed to meet Princess Anna of Rus, captivated by descriptions of her beauty. But Maria waited and waited. Days turned into weeks. There was no word from Henry IV. The silence was unbearable. Finally, on December 9, 1600, in Lyon, the waiting ended. But Maria's first meeting with her husband was far from what she had hoped for. Henry IV arrived covered in road dust, wearing a tattered doublet and dirty boots. He had ridden all the way from Paris and hadn't even bothered to change. His first words to his wife were casual and indifferent. "I am glad, madam." But what shocked her the most was not how he looked. It was how he smelled. Henry IV despised frequent bathing and had no interest in personal hygiene. He was surrounded by an overwhelming mix of sweat, road dust, and the grease from his clothes. Unlike French women, raised with discipline and restraint, Maria, a Florentine, was accustomed to elegance and meticulous self-care. The contrast between her refined fragrance and the king's unkempt appearance was staggering. In that moment, she realized that her expectations of marriage and the reality were entirely different. Henry, however, didn't seem to care. He immediately ordered dinner and bluntly told Maria that he expected her to fulfill her marital duties. The young queen was stunned. Their church wedding in France hadn't even taken place yet, but that did not concern Henry. At dinner, the king ate heartily, laughed, and made jokes, some of them completely inappropriate for Maria's refined ears. Raised in the sophisticated traditions of the Florentine court, she was appalled. At one point, she excused herself, saying she needed to prepare for the night. She quickly bathed, covered herself in fragrant oils, slipped into a delicate lace nightgown, and imagined winning over her husband with her grace and cleanliness. But when Henry entered the chamber, he wrinkled his nose. Her perfume was too strong, while he smelled entirely natural. Their wedding night became a cultural shock for both. The next morning, Maria confided in her ladies-in-waiting, "Es solo un animale. He is just an animal." The king's overwhelming odor was unbearable to her, but Henry too struggled with the suffocating cloud of her perfume. This clash of scents was only the first sign of their troubled marriage. From that moment on, it was clear there would be no harmony between them. Still, the marriage fulfilled its main purpose. Maria became pregnant. On September 27, 1601, she gave birth to the future King of France, Louis XIII. The court celebrated. Henry IV accepted the congratulations with a satisfied smile. His dynasty now had an heir. But their marriage was never a happy one. Henry IV was infamous for his many mistresses and made no effort to hide his affairs. Over time, Maria gained political influence, but their personal relationship remained cold and distant. The differences that had surfaced on their very first night only deepened over the years. After Henry IV's assassination in 1610, Maria de' Medici became regent for the young Louis XIII. However, her rule was marked by conflicts with her son and power struggles at court. Eventually, she was exiled from France and died in Cologne, far from the country she had once hoped to call home. The marriage of Maria de' Medici and Henry IV was a union filled with misunderstandings, disappointments, and profound cultural differences. They never found common ground, and their relationship was far from a fairy tale. Their story is not just one of an unhappy marriage. It is a story of two worlds colliding. A French king, accustomed to simplicity and military life, met a Florentine princess raised in luxury and refinement. Their union was not about love, but about politics, where personal happiness often had to be sacrificed for the sake of state interests. Thank you for watching. See you in the next story.